Hey, it's Neve, and welcome to Structuring for Success in the Sweet Spot micro course. I'm super excited to have you here because at the end of the next few days, you are going to know how to structure your business so you can have maximum impact on your bottom line while still only doing things that feel completely and utterly you, so that you can have a business that you love to be in that still totally works. You know, I have done the whole six-figure business. I've built a multiple six-figure business. I've worked with over 600 people in creating online businesses. I've spoken on stages in front of thousands of people. And those are all the accolades. Those are all the achievements. Those are all the things people say that they want. But the truth is, none of that has actually felt that important to me. The thing that has always mattered to me is being in a business that I enjoy on a day-to-day basis. It's doing work that lights me up and that's totally fulfilling. And I found that the more people I work with, the more I come across this. It's not about the money. It's not about the achievements. It's about doing something that makes me feel great every single day. Now, the truth is that needs to come with some money because we do need to pay the bills. We do need to live the life. We do need to have roofs over our heads. So it is incredibly important to have businesses that work. And that is also how our work reaches the people who need it. But it does create this sort of paradox where when we are in pursuit of creating the money, sometimes we come across marketing and strategies that don't quite feel like us, or they feel a bit icky, or they feel a bit off. And in order to gain traction in our business and get to where we want to be, the end goal, which is having our amazing work reaching the people who need it, we have to go through these things that don't feel so good. We have to sometimes do marketing and do sales calls and things that we go, ugh. And, truthfully, if you structure your business the right way, you don't need to do anything that doesn't feel like you. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to grow, and it doesn't mean you don't have to push your comfort zone, but you don't have to do anything that doesn't feel totally and utterly you. Now, I don't know your exact situation. If you're here, you're one of three kinds of people. Maybe you already have a business, but you're having trouble getting the traction or getting marketing that really feels good and that allows you to be you. Maybe you just have an idea and you don't quite know how to take that idea and structure it into an online business model that's going to work for you and that's going to work for your work. Or maybe you just have a desire. A lot of people know that the economy is completely changing and that now we are moving into a time where more and more people will be able to earn from doing work that's fulfilling for them, from doing the work that they feel called to do. So you haven't quite figured that out. But regardless of which situation you're in, you need a structure. You need a structure that will allow you to get a business up and running, getting traction, getting attention, and getting sales in the online space while still staying in integrity, staying in your authenticity, and staying in doing what feels good to you. There's no point ending up at the end goal where your work has achieved the success that you want it to achieve if along the way you don't get to be yourself. So that's what this micro course is all about. I promise I'll keep these lessons as short as possible. Do go through them live, as you'll be able to interact with me through the comments and through a couple of little assignments along the way. And it's going to be a lot of fun because for me, one of the most important things is that my work is fun. That's what makes it fulfilling for me. So we're going to be dipping into now day one. You will have 3 lessons coming out over the next few days, so look out for them. I'll also email you about them. But today's day 1 lesson is how to think. This is going to help you understand how to let go of following the things people tell you have to do and learning what's actually important and how you can tell the difference between the two. So enjoy. So the biggest difficulty in starting an online business actually comes right at the start, because you decide that you want to create a thriving, successful business. You want to be doing work that fulfills you, that lights you up, that's meaningful to you, and you are far away from that. You're over here, usually somewhere like in a career or doing something that's not quite looking the way you want it to look. But you don't know how to bridge that gap. So the only strategy really available to most people is the follow the leader strategy. So you find someone who started started out somewhere similar to you. Maybe they were also in a job, or they were also a stay-at-home parent, or, for whatever reason, they started out in a similar situation to you, and they ended up over here in what I like to call shiny, happy success land. They ended up where they wanted to be in the kind of business that they wanted to be in. And you want to be somewhere slightly different, but you go, okay, well, they started out similar to where I am, and they ended up similar to where I want to be. So we kind of end up thinking, okay, well, that'll be fine. We'll be able to follow their path. Now we go and we buy one of their courses, or we go through some of their training, and they teach in this beautiful linear way, saying, okay, to get from here to there, these are the steps that you follow. Now, all this sounds really good, and it sounds really logical and like, yes, this makes sense. But the truth is that nobody ever follows that straight line. In fact, even that leader didn't. They followed a path that took them all over the place before they got there. So every single moment of their journey to where they wanted to end up was slightly off track, was them sort of looping around and making mistakes, learning something new from that mistake, getting slightly more back on course, learning something else, so it's this continuous flow rather than one straight line, this continuous movement toward a general direction. And even when they get there, you never arrive. You're not like, okay, now I'm here and everything is done. You're still doing this sort of continuous looping motion as you go off track and then get back on. But that's not what they teach you. They're teaching you their learning moments. They're teaching you, okay, this was the step that took me here. Now this was the step that took me in the next place. But they're ignoring all of the deeper principles and understandings that they got that allowed them to continuously adjust when they got off track. So when you try and apply their step-by-step strategy to do the same thing, you find that you set out, and then something happens, and then you loop back again. And then you set out again, and you get a little bit further this time, but then things sort of keep cropping up, things that you weren't expecting because you aren't in the same situation they were in. Everyone starts out in a different location with different circumstances, with a different set of things going on around them. And if you don't know how to think the way they think, you'll find that when an obstacle crops up, you can't adjust for it because you don't know why they made the decisions that they made. You only know the decisions. You only know what they did, not why they did it. So you find that you continuously loop back to the start, and maybe it's just that the strategy doesn't feel very you, and you find yourself self-sabotaging and sitting in front of Netflix at 1 a.m. going, why am I not doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing? And you take all the blame on yourself, and you feel like there's something wrong with you, when really it's not that there's anything wrong with you, and it's not that there's anything wrong with how the leader is trying to teach you. The problem is that you cannot learn how to do something like creating a successful, thriving business in this kind of linear way. It's not about following what they do. It's about understanding why they do it and understanding how they think. Because there's a problem with how most of us think when it comes to approaching something like creating an online business. And well, there's three problems. The first one is we think logically. Okay, so we think with our logical brain and we try to figure it out. And the real truth is that none of it is really figure outable, and especially when you're creating work that's meaningful and fulfilling, we can't just use the logical mind, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The second is we think linearly. We think if I do this, then that will happen. And then we take an action step, and it doesn't do the thing that we expected it to do. And then we're left there going, oh no, now what? Because our formula didn't work. We took the action step, but for whatever reason, we didn't have the same kind of people in our circle of influence as that other person did. We didn't have the same factors. In fact, everyone who takes an action step online has radically different factors from every single other person. There's all these other things affecting the outcome. So when we take a step and we expect it to go a certain way, It often doesn't, because we're thinking linearly, and then this formula breaks down all the time. We keep doing the thing, and it's like kind of like bashing your head against the computer. If I keep doing it, it'll eventually work. And the truth is that it's not about the if this then that. It's about learning how to think in a more fluid motion. And the other thing that we do is we let others think for us. We say, okay, yes, I see that all the people who created success got there by fumbling around and figuring stuff out through sort of a lot of trial and error, seeing what worked for them, seeing what happened if they played around in their business. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to follow their step-by-step formula. And so we expect that if we just follow someone else's strategy, it will get us where we want to go, and then we'll be in that promised land. And once we're there, then we'll adjust the work to be a little more us, right? And this makes sense. This is how we're trained in school. We're trained to think logically, to think linearly, and to let others think for us. So it's not our fault. This is what we do in a job. This is how modern life is set up for us, is if we think this way, we'll be successful in school, we'll be successful in jobs. But guess what? It's not how you be successful in entrepreneurship, and certainly not online entrepreneurship. So what's the other option? Well, the other option is to first think aligned. Use all parts of your systems to think rather than just your logical mind. We'll talk about all of this in a moment. The second is to think experimentally, to think in a form of play, if I do this, then what happens? And the third is to think in concepts and principles from a stable base. So we still can learn from others. We have to learn from others. We really don't have anything else to go from. But if we can look at what they are doing and say, why are they doing that? And learn the concepts and the principles that they harnessed to create their success. And then we create our stable base where we know this is where I stand. Then we don't get sort of buffeted about by everyone else's ideas. We don't kind of go every time there's a new strategy that someone's teaching, we don't change everything we're doing in our business. We go, okay, will that fit in to my stable base? Yes or no? Now, the first method of thinking to incorporate is to think aligned. Now, this means to align both sides of you. Now, most people think that we think in one way, which is using our logical brain, which is information comes in, we process it logically, and we make a decision. And while that does happen, that's not the only thing at play in every decision that we make. We also have our emotional system. This is our entire body and our subconscious mind. These are all part of the emotional system, which I actually like to call your core self, because this is who you really are at heart. That deep sense of self that you have, that is your emotional system. That is the system that's plugged into your body and your feelings. And your logical mind is continuously receiving information from your emotional system. So we do make decisions logically, but have you ever found that you've made a logical decision and then not followed it? That's because your emotions didn't come on board with you. So you have this core self, that's who you are, that's who you want to be. And then layered over it, we have the logical self, which is actually a series of strategies that you have come up with over the years in order to best deal with society, fit in, make sure that you can operate within the constructs of living with other people in a society. So it's actually a very, very good thing. Both of these things are very good, but you do need to have them aligned, because you want to think of it as being like an elephant and a rider. You know, a rider is in charge of an elephant most of the time, but if that elephant is thirsty, and it walks past a source of water, it's going to turn and it's going to go to the source of water whether the rider wants it to or not. So the rider can feel like it's in charge most of the time, but really it isn't. You might have experienced this if you have set up that you're supposed to do something. Maybe you're supposed to make sales calls or something that you find truly awful. And then you find that instead of doing it, you're in front of Netflix at 1 a.m. watching your third episode of Orange is the New Black going, well, what's going on? Why am I not doing the thing I said I would do? It's because your core self is not on board. And actually, your core self wants to feel like you. That the highest aim is to feel fulfilled and to feel like you. And your logical self wants to create success and have all the trappings of it. So you can align these two by making sure that you're in that sweet spot. If you're heart driven, that's usually being driven by the core self. It's being driven by the things that you want to do. And if you're only driven by that and you don't bring in any logic, you'll find that you have frustration and lack of income because you haven't figured out how to actually make the things that you want to do work. But on the other hand, if you're only logically driven, you end up in the commercially driven side of things, and you'll find that it's drudgery, you have to force yourself to do things, and you end up in self-sabotage cycles. So you do want to line these two up and make sure you're on the same page. You want to bring in what your heart wants to do and bring in the logical way of actually making it work. So you want to focus on alignment, and you can use alignment all the time. Like I use alignment to make sure that every decision that I make in my business fits who I am. And how you do this is to start to open up communication between the two sides of yourself. Now, I don't want to dig in too much to these because we have a lot still to cover. But the first way to open up communication is to begin to notice your yes and no. You'll find that your core self communicates very much through your emotions and through your body. So when you want to know if a decision is right for you, you have a few ways that you can check. So you can do the internal check where you're basically asking yourself a question and then checking inside yourself to see if it feels like a yes or a no. Over time, you'll find that you get very keyed in to what's yes or no for you. Sway test, which is where you stand up and you ask yourself questions. And if you sway forward, it's typically a yes. And if you sway backward, it's typically a no. And also light and heavy. This is the simplest and quite often the easiest to get when you're first practicing communicating this way. So you ask yourself a question about a decision and you see which decision feels light and which decision feels heavy. And you always go with the light decision because that's the decision that's going to line up for your core self. So you want to think about this as kind of like talking to a kid. You know how when you're getting a kid to make a decision, it's always best to give them a couple of options that are acceptable for you. So your logical brain can come up with a couple of options and see what matches for your core self. The other way is through direct conversation, and this will help you to access your subconscious mind where a lot of your ideas are lurking, waiting to pop up into your brain from your core self. So one of my favorite ways to do direct conversation is simply free writing in lists. So putting on music, asking yourself a question, and just writing without judgment, just seeing what comes out in answer to that question and seeing then what insights that gives you. That's how I come up with like 90% of my ideas when it comes to marketing my business. Okay, now we're moving quite quickly now. So that is how you want to make sure that you are making aligned decisions all the time in your business. So just start to practice it. It might feel a little weird at first, but absolutely start to practice this. The second method of thinking you want to begin to incorporate is thinking experimentally. Now remember we said that an online business and online marketing is not a linear equation, much as we would like it to be. It's not if I do this, then that will happen, because there are all of these hundreds of thousands of factors at play and they are different for everybody. You are a different person from someone else. You speak differently, you have different connections, you have a different message, you have different things to say. And so we can't know that if you take the same action as someone else, you will get the exact same result. It just doesn't happen because you are in a different environment. And so this is very frustrating because when we try and think linearly, we can't. We can't know what the outcome is going to be. We can predict, but we can't know. And this is very, very frustrating for people. But the good news is that if you switch your approach in how you think about the things you're doing, you can absolutely thrive. So it's kind of more like nature than like a factory. You know, we don't actually have this closed environment where we know exactly what all the factors are. It's all fluid and moving and different. So instead of saying, if I do this, then that happens, we need to understand the concepts and the principles of the environment that we are in, so that then within that environment, we can experiment and play and see what works for us. Now, Heraclitus said, "No man can step in the same river twice, for there are other and other waters." And this is absolutely true. Even if you're taking the same action that you took before, you're in a slightly different environment all the time, because the environment is constantly shifting and changing. It's fluid. So instead of saying, okay, I need to do the same steps I did before, you say, well, what concept, what principle worked for me before? Well, the principle that water, in the right circumstances, is buoyant. I can create a boat. And maybe the first time you had a tree boat, but now the water is a little bit lower. So now you need to go and find, a blow-up boat that will skim right across the top of the surface. So it's the same principle you're using, but it's a different boat. It's a slightly different action you are taking. So this is very much just about experimenting, seeing what works in each environment you're in, and having fun with it, and knowing generally, hey, boats float. Therefore, if I want to get from here to there, I need some kind of a boat. It doesn't have to look exactly like someone else's boat or exactly like any boat I've used in the past, but I generally am going to need a boat, right? So some of the kinds of principles that you'll encounter online are things like, what drives a buying decision? Now, I always teach the 3 R's, which is respect, relevance, and relationship. So then when you're taking your actions, you can say, well, rather than coming up with the perfect words to sell someone, or rather than coming up with the exact strategy where I do exactly the same steps someone else did, I can look at, how is what they were doing helping to build relationship? How is it generally helping them with the respect? How is it helping their audience to see how relevant what they have is for them? So you can take this principle, you can look at someone else's actions, and you can say, this is how they're applying the principle. How can I apply it? Other principles are things like empowering versus manipulative messaging, which we're going to talk about in the next lesson. That all income comes from excess capacities. So all income streams actually come from something that you have access to that's not fully tapped into. How information and messages flow on the internet. These are all principles, and you can learn them through experimentation, observation, and lessons and learning. And my favorite principle is that there are no rules. There's legalities online, there's absolutely legal things that you need to follow, but there's no rules in marketing. There's no thing that says you have to have an opt-in page, or you have to set your business up this way because that's what I did. You absolutely don't. As long as everything is totally above board and ethical and moral, you can do what you want. And it's actually very, very freeing, because it means that you can learn from others, learn the principles that they're applying, and then apply them in new and experimental and fun ways. And, if that's freaking you out, don't worry. Like some of the structures that we're going to look at, in the next 2 lessons are going to help you give structure to this, but still have your experiment and play. So principles. The third way of thinking that you want to incorporate is thinking from a stable base. This is how you ensure that you don't get buffeted about when you are learning from other people, because you still do need to learn from other people. You still need to learn the principles and the concepts and the strategies that other people use. But you don't want to every single week be changing your strategy because of something someone said. So it's helpful to remember that almost every rule that you have in your head about marketing is just someone else's experiment that went well for them, right? So even the people who are teaching stuff that they've been teaching for years, this is an experiment that worked for them, that's continuously worked for them, and they've probably uncovered a lot of the concepts and principles that make it work, but it's still an experiment, and it does not mean that you have to do what anyone else is doing. So you want to take ownership of your business and then assess suggestions. So having a stable base of that your business is not shifting from here. then you can see if things fit into what you want your business to be. And this allows you to do a lot of the deep work at the start. So I know that, action is incredibly important, and I am not a fan of, staying in analysis mode forever. However, doing some deep thinking and deep work and deep decision making on what's right for you at the start of your business will save you enormous heartache in being pulled in a million different directions. So what I like to do is use a structure called the business wheel to help you decide what's right for you in 5 aspects of your business, that can become the stable base you operate from. You know these deep parts of your business, and then you can see if something fits into your business. You don't have to do anything that isn't a match for you and who you are and how you want to be. Right? So this is actually really exciting and really important. Now I'm going to skim through these in my full tailor-made online business program. We spent a module on each of these, digging into the deep concepts that make this work. But we will skim over them quickly, and you can have a look and see which of these are already kind of really stable base for you and which you want to solidify. Now the business wheel starts with you in the center, and this is you and your vision for what you want your life to look like on a day-to-day basis, what you want your work to look like on a day-to-day basis. This needs to be at the center and the hub of everything you do, otherwise you will get pulled off track. Now, once you have that, you need to know the 4 quadrants: the income stream, the audience, the message that you want to portray, and the marketing that you want to do. So all of these need to align to you. They need to be things that fit and match for you. There are deep concepts, for each of them that I go over in my full tailor-made online business program. But really, all you need to do is think, in order to create that vision that I have for my future, for my day-to-day life in the future, my day-to-day business, what do I need to do in each of these quadrants? What income stream feels great? What audience do I actually want to work with? What message would I feel powerful sharing with the world? And what style of marketing would really suit me? Because it's all about picking what's right for you in these aspects and then getting them to work together so that the income stream is a product or a service or something that actually helps your audience. And you communicate how it will help them through your message, and you deliver your message to them through your marketing. And all of these things work in tandem, and they work around who you are and who you want to be. Now, we've really quickly dipped into these 3 different types of thinking, so I want to just briefly go over how to apply your new thinking. First, you want to start your 2 sides talking. So start asking yourself yes/no decisions and feeling what that's like inside. Start a practice of free writing every single day. Look at the things that you can do to begin to open up communication between your body and your subconscious mind and your logical brain. Then create your core vision. What do you want your business to look like? What do you want your daily tasks to look like? What would be really fulfilling for you as a business to be in? Then build out that business wheel based on the kind of life that you want to be living. Then what income stream makes sense? What audience do you want to work with? What message do you want to be sharing with them? And what marketing, what basic marketing, as in what marketing medium or what marketing sort of location do you want to be in? And we're going to look at these in the future lessons. Then after you've built your business wheel, you want to create your non-manipulative sales structure. This is so key if you want to enjoy being in your business, because you definitely don't want to feel like you have to be salesy, you have to be pushy, you have to be manipulative. That doesn't feel good. That's not fulfilling. Manipulating others does not actually feel good in the long term. So we want to create a non-manipulative sales structure so that you can have the success that you want without having to manipulate other people's emotions. We're looking at that in the next lesson. Next, then you want to begin to learn concepts and principles. Some of that will come from watching others. Some of that will come from being out there and experimenting in your own business and seeing what you learn. And anytime you want to learn from someone else, always ask why. Why are they doing that? Why are they taking that action? What does that do for them? What underlying principle are they harnessing here? And then experiment with strategies and ideas while maintaining your business wheel base. So once you have that base, you know that everything's taken care of. And once you have the structure for creating sales put together, then you get to have fun in your business. And we are going to be digging into that in the third lesson. So I hope that this lesson has brought you some powerful aha moments. You'll find that you're already beginning to think a little bit differently about your business, about your own ownership of your business, and your own ability to just do what's right for you within your own business. And you'll find that the shift in thinking begins to happen and be more integrated over time as you move forward. So it's really, really powerful. Now, in the next lesson, we are going to be looking at your sales structure, because the number one cause of failure for heart-based online entrepreneurs is that they don't like sales. And all of the sales strategies that they're taught tend to be based on manipulative marketing, on touching on people's fear, on aggravating people's pain points, on hyping them up so they get so excited they have to buy. And if you're in it for fulfillment, for helping others, and for creating a business that you love, then you'll find that manipulating other people doesn't feel great, and you either try and do it and continuously self-sabotage, or find that you just never really do it at all. But the truth is that sales can be powerful without being manipulative. You don't have to manipulate the motions in order to create a powerful sales structure. So in the next lesson, that's what we're looking at. And once you know this sales structure, you can use it over and over in multiple different ways, in all kinds of different businesses, and you never have to have that icky feeling towards sales again, because it just sort of takes care of itself. You'll see, it's a really, really great lesson, so you want to make sure to come back for that here in a couple of days. And in the meantime, I have 2 specific assignments for you. The first is to ask yourself the question, what is my stable base? So if you think back to that business wheel, what is the one thing that is totally set, stable, rock solid in your business? It could be your vision for the future. It could be your message, what it is that you want people in the world to know. It could be your income stream. Maybe you have a product that you're like, this product, the world needs it. And what is it that's your total stable base that you can always rely on and fall back on in the midst of all the noise online? And then number 2, you want to ask, what's shaky? What's a little uncertain in your business? What's that area of your business that you keep getting sort of batted around and you can't quite find your grounding and find your feet there? Knowing those 2 things is going to help you to build that base out, because you'll know what you have that you can rely on and what you need to work on next. So leave those 2 things as a comment below. I will go through and reply to all of your comments. Leave your questions if you have a question, if you have something that you weren't totally certain of today, or maybe an area of your business that you have been really struggling to find the stable base in. So leave that comment. Let us know, 1, what is your one rock solid foundation that you have in your business, and 2, what's a little bit shaky? And even if your business is just an idea right now, you can let us know, what is it that you know for sure already about it, and what is it that you're totally uncertain of? So leave that comment below and check back in a couple of days, because you do not want to miss the non-manipulative sales structure that will allow you to make sales in a way that feels amazing. I'll see you there.